I think we're ready to start. Sorry everyone for the delay, unexpected technical issues, but hopefully it worth the wait. Today I'd like to speak to you about Protractor and Selenium end-to-end testing. But before we start, I'd like to know first my audience. So I know some of us here are developers. How many testers do we have?
Testers?
Yeah.
Testers?
Yeah.
Oh, we have testers too.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if you do testing for a living, it's not developers. Okay, so mostly developers, basically. Okay, great. I assume that in this case, I'll try to focus on the code unless you have different expectation. Okay, so we can get started. So my name is Asawari. I'm a senior software consultant. Recent father. This is my daughter, 2 months old. Thank you. I'm passionate about software development. I've been doing C#, Java at the back end, and I love JavaScript, but I don't do it for a living, full time. But I do it as much as I can, part of my job, or whenever I get some time when my baby is sleeping, basically. I started working first with my first experience been working with Agile, which is great. Started with Intel. Working basically in Agile Extreme Programming Framework, test-driven development. Then moved to work with Nokia. They used Scrum. That was my first experience with Scrum. I worked also with Walt Disney, and they did some Kanban at the time. I did work for other companies as well, but I thought maybe highlighting those companies, they're much better than the others. So let's start the agenda today. I'd like to speak in general about Protractor and end-to-end testing. Maybe the problem, why do we need testing? Why do we focus on testing? Why do we have to do test automation, test-driven development? I'm going to bring a complex system, and maybe we can talk about how can we test complex system, or the complex system that I'm going to show you, because that's, I think, the challenge in the real world. Most of the time when you pick up a book or you go to a site and you Google Angular or Protractor, you get the simplest thing possible, which is testing Angular site. But in real life, when you go start testing actually complex application, it gets really difficult and gets more challenging, basically. I'll speak about, I'd like to take a little bit time today when I show the demo. I'd like to show you how we can do the UI testing as a separate component without doing end-to-end testing. I think we're going to talk more about this later. Demo and question at the end. Software crisis, 1965 to 1985. I think at that time we had Brown, the industry developers had Brown developing applications. Most of the application either didn't meet deadlines or low quality, many defects caused probability damage, or it just doesn't work. At that time, didn't work. Whatever they were trying to do. So they had big Brown, what they called it at that time, software crisis. Basically, and they had many reasons. That it's not just because for lack of testing. It's they have many reasons behind this. So they've been trying to do something, but was not working for them. But to me, when I started reading about this, it felt like they just were they're missing some tools. I think that's what the industry were trying to get to. That led us to what we do today. It's like cutting up a watermelon without a knife. We try to do it with your hand. It's quite difficult and challenging. I'm not sure that's going to be easy for you. It's going to be interesting to watch though, but it's not easy. I'm not sure how you're going to do it. So I think that's what might be and what they were trying to do. They got good people, but they couldn't do what they wanted to do. And just after that, many technologies has been developed, mainly Agile, which is interesting. Extreme programming and Scrum, which is the Agile framework. It came about 1966, 1996 and 1997, basically. To me, Agile is not just a methodology. Agile is a tool set of other. They work together. It's not just iteration. To do it, they needed a lot of things to get it working. Kent Beck created the first framework, testing framework, which is the Smalltalk unit in 1998, which is, you can notice how the time is close to get all these tools together. Agile, the testing framework, and at the same time, test-driven development started. It ended like what now evolved to BDD, if you do BDD, which is behavior-driven development, and there are many frameworks, which is Jasmine, one of them for JavaScript, and Mocha as well. But Jasmine we can speak about today. Also, you can see here Selenium 2.0, which is the WebDriver that we are using today. There is imported to many languages, but interestingly, the Selenium 2.0 was that came out from combining both project with Selenium from ThoughtWorks and actually WebDriver by Google. So those two companies, those two developers, they got together and they actually got Selenium 2.0, the Selenium that we're using today. And Selenium probably is the only that I'm aware of, the only testing framework that can test the UI and end-to-end testing from that point. But let's see, before we go, let's speak about the advantages of Selenium. First of all, of course, the regression test and manual testing. The industry we used to do waterfall. We used to release once a year or once every 2 years. Manual testing was not a big deal at that time. But Agile is proposing that we actually have to deploy every 2 weeks or every week or every 4 weeks, depends. But to get this kind of small window and to get working code in this window, you just cannot do it without tools. You cannot just have a team of testers who do manual testing. That's going to take some time to actually, it's not going to fulfill your objective. And that's, I think, the main reason why we have testing frameworks, why we have end-to-end testing, is actually to reduce the number of manual testing needed to get the project out, working project out. And basically, as you know, the test automation helps with this, to fulfill this purpose. When it comes to end-to-end journey, basically, it's a user journey. Normally, Selenium, we try not to write every test or every click as end-to-end, basically. So normally, it's user journeys only. User journeys, they're customized journeys. They to fulfill some goals at the beginning of the project. So if you have broken journey, that means the company losing money. If you're missing a link, a help link in the page or about me, the company won't lose money. So a user journey is whatever journey that the company needs, that the customer needs to buy or to purchase your policy or your cover or your product. That's what's your journey. And ideally, that's what we need to have in end-to-end testing. That's what we do with Selenium. Also, Selenium is great for browser compatibility testing. Otherwise, we have to do it manually, which is it's boring if we do. There's the complex system that we talked about. I'll let you look at it a little bit. There's basically normal legacy code, and you are asked by your manager, by a company, to actually extend this legacy system and to build and to use Angular. And you want to do web API and services, with Java or Node or C#, does not really matter. So those two blue boxes is what we want to add with the database. And you have the existing legacy system that you're going to work with. This legacy system exists of third-party components, like, as example, underwriting system, business rule engine, and financial system here. So obviously, it's not something that it's not simple. I think it's more it's very complicated to test. And the challenging part is how can you add and implement what you want without actually making sure that you are delivering good quality code and delivering the project. The numbers here just simply shows how we can test the system here. Number one, which is that we're talking about the unit test, basically. One means unit testing, the component testing, so we can isolate and test each component if possible through mocking the endpoints if you can, or through unit testing. Basically, this number one is ideal for this boxes. 3 basically, which is Selenium. You cannot basically do Selenium for and web APIs. Selenium will work again is the UI only. And number 2 is just the integration test. If we do just like a services test or contract testing. Any questions? How to test the complex system? We just spoke about like the unit testing and the integration testing. How can we test this kind of system? I think one problem with the system like this, if you're going to build your Selenium on top of it, you're gonna notice it will take time to get the feedback from the CI. So assuming that you are testing the new system here, the blue box, to run the system, you have to deploy every component most of the time. So if you have developers in your team, they're changing, as example, legacy web API, C# code, or even the Java, that means you have to build and deploy every component before you run the Selenium testing. Now, that's why it's expensive. Selenium and testing, end-to-end testing is expensive for that reason. One is it takes time to get the feedback from the CI. Second reason is if your system is this stable for any reason, because we have different third parties here, if it's stable for any reason, your Selenium will fail at some point. So you might end up with kind of like maintaining the Selenium code, end-to-end code. I'm not trying to not sell it to you. I'm gonna tell you why I'm saying that, because it's very important. The last thing that you want is to build thousands of Selenium tests, and you end up with like a maintenance nightmare at some point of time. I've worked for companies who had like 3,000 Selenium tests, and they start when they release our failing test at 300, which is similar to what we had last iteration, which is similar to what we had before. So it's okay to deploy, to go ahead with it, which is bad, And that's why I think just because we can, it doesn't mean like we should. Not every test should be in Selenium test. So we have to organize our tests in the right places and do the right thing, basically. Otherwise, it's gonna be difficult to manage it and maintain it. Now, there's the test environment. I'm sure you heard about this. Ideally, we write most of our testing in unit test, either by Java or JavaScript test, as you see here. And the integration, because they're more expensive. You see the integration takes more time. We have less of them, but it takes longer time than the unit test. You can run more unit tests and cover more code than you can with integration test. But integration test is very important. Sometimes you have system, as example, a system like this I find it very difficult to actually write a unit test and make sure that I can say my system works or my code works. Sometimes it's quite difficult to say that, So integration test is a must, but we have to be careful of what to write in this integration test. Business logic, I'll try to keep where the unit test is. We might end up with some business logic and integration test, but we have to be careful what to put there. With the UI, UI here is Selenium, basically. That's what they mean by UI. Same thing, we should have lists because they're list stable. Lists of the Selenium test. And of course, every one of those layers have a purpose. And that's why we have lists of them when we go to the top. It's amazing if we can do everything in Selenium, but unfortunately we can't. It's amazing if we can do everything with integration test, but unfortunately we can't. Unit test is what we do for test-driven development. We should cover as much as we can when we develop, and then we move to the integration test to cover it.
Can I ask a question?
Please, yeah.
What's the difference between, can you give us an example, the difference between UI and integration test?
Integration test, let's say, unit test, UI is Selenium.
UI and integration test.
Selenium is like what you use when you test the UI like a user journey, like a user outside the command. User wouldn't interact with APIs, as example. So if you have, we can speak about this, like most of our applications, if you use an Angular, you're building a SPA application. And if you are doing a SPA application, your presentation layer will interact with backend, which is list of web service or API. Now, the integration test, I will put them against the APIs. So you test the API as much as you possible, because they're more stable than the Selenium test, because they don't have to interact with different browsers. They don't have to rely on they don't have to rely in many things, like when it comes to installation to the browser, the compatibility versions. We need the Selenium, but we don't want to be testing our API through Selenium. And that's what's the integration here. So we should have as many as we can, or we should pull whatever we can from the top UI to the integration test. So whatever you can test from the API is great. If you can, as example, I'm working now for an insurance company. We create covers or policies. We test if this cover had got the right, as example, policy coverage. If we make a quote, we check how much is the money, how much we get in for every code given, like the customer buying a specific product with specific options. All this, it's ideal for the integration test. I wouldn't put in the Selenium, because Selenium has nothing to do with like all this, business logic. Selenium, they just want to make sure that wiring works, which is we can talk about later. But integration, it's like whatever I can test, and the integration is more stable. API and C# and Java, they're more stable than Selenium. So let's push as much as we can down the pyramid, because the more you go up, the harder it gets to maintain and to have stable tests.
I have one question here. I always find the integration tests redundant. I feel that when you have a unit test, which are actually testing, we have write the test cases for each and every scenarios of the classes and everything. And in an integration test, the number of classes involved and the testing the behaviors. And on the top, we already have a functional test cases, end-to-end test cases, which are also testing the functions of the softwares, whether it's working fine or not. So integration tests, in other words, they are just they becomes redundant, because whenever some changes will be made in a classes or somewhere, so the unit test will start failing if the functionality get affected. So the integration test, how you will say that they have some values, because it looks to me, when I was investigating this, why we need integration test, and when I just came to know that it's completely redundant.
Yeah.
So if we have a functional test cases, if we don't have a functional test cases, then integration test cases has value.
I would say it depends of what type of system you do. I think as a unit test is very important. I wonder if you have a system that actually does a lot of CQRS, how are you going to do it without actually make sure it works, just based on unit test? I think that's going to be very difficult. If you're doing a simple CRUD application, I totally understand. Probably you don't need a lot of integration tests, because you just want to make sure that things happen. And business logic, it should be tested, and you're right, in unit test. So we'll try to test the business logic as we can, but the integration tests, they're quite different. As I said, if you have CQRS and you want to make sure that things happen, how do you test implementation in unit test? That's something I don't like when we write unit test and I refactor my test, and instead of the behavior is the same, but it fails because I renamed the method, or because just like the implementation change in the test. I think this is wrong, in my opinion. I think every time that I refactor the code and change the implementation, not behavior, and the test fail, that tells me that the test is not written the way that's supposed to be written, and I think can be improved. Expecting calls in services, that's just, I would say, stay away from. Now, integration, they're good to make sure first things are wired. You cannot get away with this. When you do unit testing, one thing we have to admit, we use heavy mocking. That's what we do. And when you do heavy mocking, you cannot just say my application just worked when I deployed. I don't think we have that enough trust. And that's what integration test is good for. Now, Selenium would do the same thing, to make sure that things are wired. So I agree. Yeah. So if you find any redundant, I totally agree with you. You don't put things in integration test if it's redundant in UI. You're absolutely right. And it depends if your application, in our case right now, with the application you're building, we try to do as much as we can unit testing. But unfortunately, at the end of the day, and the integration test is what saves us. We do a lot of price checking, making sure the price is right, and the code for the following product and following option, it works. And to get that working, we have to actually interact with, as example, the financial system. Without actually, your unit test cannot interact with the financial system and won't tell me how does the legacy API work. Sometimes you will put in a place that you can interact with other systems that you have less control over, and you might make assumptions, and it might be the wrong assumptions, and you might test your code or test my code, and that's what we have started. We tested our code thinking it's happy days. But as soon as we start putting things together, which is the integration test, just make sure your component works well with other components given what you think it is, things start failing. Now, I'm not testing the business logic, I'm testing the wiring and my expectation in the unit test here. But in some system, you're absolutely right, they might be redundant. So if you feel they're redundant, I would say don't do them. But you have to be careful, because sometimes they're not redundant and they're testing your system the way that you want to test it. Few of them is good.
I only feel a need of integration tests when I think I have to, improve my legacy code. Okay, so I have to lock down the functionality of the existing classes. So I will write the integration test, everything, and then separating refactoring the classes, writing the unit test and everything. So then at the end, after refactoring, I will run the integration test to make sure the functionality is intact. So that time I can find the importance of integration test. Otherwise, if we have the functional test cases, I think the integration test becomes completely redundant. Because functional test cases are responsible for testing the wiring, complete functionality from A to Z, from end to end, and everything. So that I think a lot about integration test, but I could not find any reason.
I think I can't give you good examples with them. As I said, the SecureOS. If you are using SecureOS in your system, how are you going to test it with the unit testing? That's just a simple example. Like SecureOS is difficult to be unit tested, and then you're gonna be while testing. There's a command raised.
Why is it difficult to unit test it?
I'm sorry.
Can you give a bit more detail about why is it difficult?
Why is it difficult?
Yeah,
because you're gonna be with SecureOS, you're gonna be raising commands and events, and you expect the behavior to happen when a specific type of events or command happen. So you got a lot of listeners, you got a lot of commands and events happening at the in your system. Now, if you're gonna test it in the way that unit test should be tested, you're gonna be expecting an event to be raised. But what does that mean? An event to be raised. To me, it's implementation. We are testing the implementation of our system. So one day I come and refactor and I throw SecureOS out of the window. I will throw all my tests along with it, and that's my problem with testing the implementation. Now, you're right. If it's functional only and you're not testing implementation and you feel like you are covered, probably you don't need many of them. You probably might need few, and maybe you don't need any if you have Selenium.
Yeah,
and I think it depends of the architecture of the system, and it depends of your system. So I do probably had some projects that I didn't need. We didn't need the integration test. But as example, the project that we work on with SecureOS and all this stuff, I think with the integration, with just unit test, the test gonna get large, setup gonna be too big, and it's gonna be ugly, from unit testing. Actual integration test cleaned up our code and allow us to refactor and to go faster with it. Now, I'm not saying that we ditch the unit testing. No, we need unit testing, but we need the unit test where we test the business logic. When we actually do some logic to test how the business logic work, not the implementation and the three-ways events, or when what listener listen to this event. That's completely irrelevant. Testing implementation, I think it's not ideal. When you're at unit testing, but by nature we do. I used to do it all the time. By nature, I just test, and first thing I do, guess what? I just set up and expect the specific method. But then, I thought I think behavior-driven development makes more sense to me, and it allowed me to deliver code faster and with similar quality and maybe better. But I have sometimes to rely on something higher. I have to go. Sometimes it's okay to go to the next level to test what you want to do. Sometimes you want to actually push things down. So I don't expect to test business logic in the UI layer, and we'll try not to test business logic at the integration layer as well. But if you have to, because of the if you just suffer from this kind of complex system, you do. But if you do simple system throughout the application, maybe you don't need the integration layer. So it cannot have one solution work for everything. I would say depends on your project. You pick the right solution for you. You might need it, and you might not need it. So I think if you want, I can show you kind of example of code, that can be very interesting.
No, I think you have valid reasons for cross-cutting concerns. I think we need an integration test. For example, if we have written a REST-based web services, and we have a front end that's communicating to the REST-based web services, so the Selenium can only test the end-to-end functionality. But REST-based web services can have transactions inside, and those cannot be shown to the endpoints. Okay, so whether the service was involved in transactions or not, or transaction failed, or transaction was successful, or the error code is being sent for some other reasons, or not because of the transaction failure. So these are the things which cannot be detected by the Selenium. But in that case, the cross-cutting concerns, I think, are the best candidates for testing through integration tests. I think your answer is very good. Thank you very much for this clarification.
Sorry, just one more question regarding the integration tests. go back to previous
Previous
slides.
slide, okay.
So now you have many components here. Would you prefer to have the integration test between just two components, or can it be across multiple ones? Or which one should be?
I'm sorry, you mean as example?
So, for example, you are calling from UI, you are calling the web API. So you haven't, you just want to see if they stick together, they work together. So you write an integration test to see.
No.
And do you mock out the
So
rest
my
of the stuff? Do you mock, for example, for the calls to web services?
Yeah. My question now, if you're gonna write an integration test for the scenario you just said, where are you gonna put your integration test? You're talking about the UI, layer here, and you're talking about the web API. Where are you gonna put your test? In the UI, or are you gonna put it in the web API, the integration test that you're talking about?
I mean, it doesn't matter. For example, if I am testing between, I want to see
Just in between
the
the-
UI and the API are working together. I have a controller. I just want to see if my controller is handling my request properly or not.
Selenium.
You do it through
Selenium, but not the business
Go
logic, it's the
on
wiring. So you always, like, as example, I would write integration test in the web API layer to test how does this component work with the rest of the system and other components. That's what the integration test. So now, when you talk about how does my UI layer gonna work with the rest of the system, I'm gonna write my integration test or Selenium test at that place, say, to make sure it actually behaves as I expected. So that's always, you always take your command and you write your integration test or your Selenium test and that component to test how does it work with the rest of the world, how does it interact, does it interact as I expect with other components. But we have to be careful not to put business logic. There are two different things here, not to put business logic. One thing we have to be careful about also, if you have business logic in the web API, let's say you are pulling some data from a database in the legacy web API, probably what you don't want to do to write integration test in the web API to test that component data. That's really bad, because any changes in that one, if you don't deploy this, it's just gonna fail. It's just not right. You have to test you have to put the right test at the right place. And the test, if the logic belongs to the web API legacy, the integration test should belong to that one. And this web API should just test the interaction with it, just how does it work with, if you place it this picture basically, how does it work with other components. So yes, I would have a Selenium, the answer, in the UI to make sure that my UI component work well with the rest of the system. I'm going to move now I'm going to speak about Selenium a little bit. This just probably you guys know how the traditional life cycle. There's a .NET. I'm showing this. I'm going to get back to it, but I'm showing this now just because to show the difference between SPA application and a traditional site. A SPA application, as you know, that the application loads once, and lots of AJAX and JSON responses it serves, and that's a bit different. Selenium is a tool at the end of the day, it's a small thing that for us, like this, it looks cool. For Selenium, it's a big deal because Selenium you normally work based in the page load when the page status, ready status is actually ready to go. And with SPA application, doesn't have the ready status, is just DOM status happen once with ready, and the rest is just AJAX. And the reason I'm talking about this now is
so Selenium is not better in this case for SPA application.
That's what I'm going for.
Okay.
That's why I think we have this presentation. We try to tell you why we should use Protractor and why Protractor is better than the rest of the Selenium drivers. Now, one thing I'd like to talk about here, I'm sure all of us been working in systems. They have like maybe C# or Java, and I assume that we have the Selenium in C# using right now in your company, or Java as example. I think one of the difficult part, if you bring AngularJS, is to convince everyone that actually we should do it in Protractor, not what we have in Selenium, because normally corporations, they don't like sometimes change. Selenium, Protractor, why do I have to do Protractor now, and they have to use Node.js, and they have to use other tools that they don't understand. Why do I have to do this? Which is, I think one of the things very important is to write the test in the same language that you write your production code. That's one important thing. It simplifies a lot of things. The test, the Selenium test has to be written in the same language and live at the same place as the source or next to it, as close as possible to it. not in a different project, because maintenance is going to be hard in that way. There we already have currently 2 web drivers, JavaScript drivers. One of them is WebDriver.js by Selenium team, and the other one is WebDriver.io by Source Lab. Angular decided that they want Protractor. You wonder why do you need another, implementation of Selenium, but Angular team believes that it's more stable if they just develop one, and they have. Interestingly, if you go to Angular site and you check any example, to their documents, you always find a snippet of how to test it using Protractor. Interestingly, they don't have how to test it through using unit test, which is what they do. They have Protractor always. So a tab for the source code, HTML, JavaScript, HTML, and Protractor right next to it, which is I find is very interesting. Why Protractor? Why don't you show me how to? You want to show me in JavaScript test, unit test, but they do it with Protractor, and we can speak about why they do that. I think. So we just spoke about like the Protractor. Protractor can run either Mocha or Jasmine. Those are the testing framework for JavaScript. Protractor is an extension, or it's a wrapper around WebDriver.js, which is what we said is it's Selenium team implementation. Driver, CLOM driver. If you are using Java Selenium, or if you use a C# Selenium, Protractor is capable to work with them. It's capable to work with the Selenium server, Selenium hub that you have currently in your company, and with the same driver even that you are using today. You just have to point it to the driver locations, or you can use the Node module driver, like what we just done with the Camel machine. We just installed the web manager and the drivers and all the cool stuff, but that can be managed by Node.js. So how does can you use Angular with different, basically, how does Angular work, in the case that you have the page loads one? I think this is very important, why Protractor is more stable, because of this reason. Protractor understands the life cycle of Angular. It knows if there is a communication with the server or not. It knows if there is HTTP request and if the server is waiting for the response or not. And that's what, that's why Protractor is better than just the normal Selenium. Normal Selenium wouldn't know there is the HTTP request at the back end, it wouldn't know there's Angular, just clicking buttons. And most of the time, if you use Selenium to an Angular side, you can end up with a lot of explicit waits, which is something that I'm not a fan of, because if you're going to wait for a second in your development environment, how long are you going to wait in your test environment? What if you have a performance issue and the machine gets slower? You can end up with more fragile tests. I've been doing like Angular for like a few years now, couple of years or 3 years now, and they don't have sleeps. In my code, I've been doing Angular for a year now. It's amazingly, I don't have browser.sleep, which is something I've done with Selenium, which is I hate, But in this one, I don't have it, which is, I think it's great, and it's even something that didn't imagine that I'm gonna have actually Selenium, not to write any sleeps. It's actually a great implementation. Protractor is a great implementation of Selenium, or extension. They have extended Selenium in a great way to work really good with Angular. Something like this, I never got to use it, but like in the documentation, they expose wait for Angular, which is wait for Angular when Angular is ready, not the page is ready. When Angular is ready for the Selenium to keep clicking things, that's what they use in the background. So we can use it, but I don't find a use for it. They also added more locators. If you are familiar with Selenium, you can locate an element using ID, class name, tag name, but they added more. As example here, Angular binding. If you've been using Angular binding is specific to Angular. Repeater, you can select by repeater, by option, by model, by take button text. So they added more locators that we can use. You might not use them, but you might use them. I think it's great that you have the option now to actually select elements, and if you don't have an ID, which is something I don't like, you end up with normal Selenium picking up, maybe sometimes creating an XPath for it, which is, I think, I found very fragile to add XPath to locate an element, because as soon as you change your HTML, the whole thing gone. Your Selenium is broken. You might end up with this if you are maintaining a legacy application. But in Angular, if you were asked one day to test an existing application, you can use the, as example, binding, because normally, binding or model, that's how Angular behaves. The behavior is embedded in the HTML. So I think that's it's good option to have, basically. Maintenance, when you do Selenium in general, I think using the page object is important. I'm going to show you what do I mean by the page object. But the page object will allow me to actually encapsulate or isolate the HTML and not allow it to leak to the rest of my application, or my tests. And that's very important, because it might be just fine when you write one Selenium test, but when you end up with like a lot of Selenium tests, it's going to be a maintenance hell to keep. If you rename an ID, and then you have to change all your tests because you renamed the ID. So don't let your HTML to leak to your Selenium code. So keep it separate. Keep Selenium and the HTML separated and away from your code actually and the test. Export requires just an Node.js way to encapsulate code. It's a good practice to have and to keep your code in one place. Tests in general, they're living documentation. Selenium and even unit testing, it's I think mainly to understand the system you have two options, either to read the code, production code, or to go over the test. And they find that Selenium is a great way, especially if you write your test using BDD, it's a great way to express the system and tell you what the system is doing in the following cases, and you can use the BDD is just a framework that can be used at the authentication layer as well. So it's a documentation. So our test is our documentation. So we have to make sure that we write it and we care about it as much as we can. Can you use Angular with other non-Angular site? Yes, you can. You just have to flag true to disable it. But normally, if you just run Angular against a non-Angular site, Protractor against non-Angular site, what you're going to end up with the Protractor failure, cannot find Angular. Just if you want to work, just in case, like in my case, I had an application with mixed, site. I have to go through non-Angular to get to the Angular, so I needed to disable the, enable ignore synchronization. Go ahead, please.
Everything you say about Angular is that mostly true about Angular 2, or?
I'm not sure really. I haven't spent time to Angular 2, but it's a very interesting question. I'll see if I can learn more about So testing the presentation layer. Now I'm gonna take a little bit like different or something new, something probably is different than just writing end-to-end Selenium. That we understand what's the advantage of end-to-end Selenium. We understand what's the advantage of the UI test. And the unit test, I'm talking now about just Angular, the presentation layer. Normally, the presentation layer is thin, and it's good to keep it thin that way. We try to avoid testing implementation, and the same thing in the Angular, and that means that we don't. I find it very challenging if you have been writing any unit testing in Angular. How do you test broadcasting? As example, if you are broadcasting and listening to an event, in Selenium, I think that's interesting. How to do it in Selenium. I would say do not test it, and using unit test. But I'll show you how we can test it differently. The Angular testing, unit testing Angular, I think is not, in my opinion, is not good enough, because at the end of the day, Angular is just an extension of the HTML DOM elements, So to make sure that whatever you want to do with Angular actually works, you have to test it from the UI. It's good to have the unit test if you have any business logic. But again, the UI is very important to test Angular. It's not just that. So now I'd like to show you how we can do Angular without end-to-end. If you're familiar, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Angular. Angular has an Angular mocks library. One of the Angular mocks library is the HTTP backend. This HTTP backend you can use in testing, unit testing, to mock and intercept the HTML communication and return the response that you want. That's how Angular actually can test your services, if you have any service that talk to the backend through unit testing. Now, I'd like to show you how can we use this library and how can we mock the backend to test the UI component in isolation. So ideally, not write unit test. If I don't have business logic, And what I want to do is to show how can I test my presentation layer without interacting with unstable server, backend server. If I have any, sometimes, as we said. I'm going to show you now a demo of this. Basically, my application is, there's my application. It's a simple to do. You just tick box. Currently, given what I have, it doesn't work. I cannot create to-dos, of course, because I don't have backend. I didn't ask. Actually, there's a good demo because I don't have my machine, so I'm working on my machine, and I just copied the HTML and JavaScript. I don't have really Java backend or Node.js. I don't have a database. It doesn't work. But let's see. From my test, I want to see if I can actually. Where's my test? There we go. I have here a grunt task. It's called UI test. And I'm running Chrome, as you see here. And this Chrome actually creates elements successfully. And the test passed. So what I just showed you is how to test the UI with Selenium without interacting with the rest of the system, and the test gone really quick and really fast, like you're running unit test. I'm going to show you how do we do it. But I think in my opinion, this is very powerful because it will reduce the end-to-end testing. Because Selenium is not bad. The problem with Selenium is that what we want to test is just sits at the top of everything, and it makes it less stable, and it's difficult and slow. And that's why people, our companies, spend so much time maintaining Selenium or maintaining the acceptance test that's written in Selenium. But Selenium should be just different. I'm using Jasmine, I'm using a tool, I'm using Chrome, or even Firefox. Let's see that. So let's say I want to make sure before I check in my code, whatever code I written, it's actually works for Firefox and IE. I don't have IE here because it's a Mac. But normally, if I have an IE, which is something we all fall in as developers, we write our code and we just write it in Chrome. And happy days, we push it, and at the end of the day, it does not.
I have IE,
You have IE? I didn't know that. So now, if you see, did it work? I'm not on. I don't have the same server. I have to start basically. Hang on, sorry. I have not tried this. Oh, I don't have so I'm probably not going to show you this. Let me. Sliver. Okay, starting. Selenium server starting. Okay, so if you see here, Chrome started. Where's Firefox? You don't have Firefox. Oh, I didn't find Firefox. It should fire Firefox here, but unfortunately we don't have Firefox. But if we have Firefox driver, we can find the test runs in multiple capabilities, and I can show you here from the code actually how is that working. So Protractor with multiple zoom, sure. You can see here, you can provide your Chrome drivers that you want, and with single command, you can fire all the tests at the same time running different browsers, and they pass at the same time. You don't have to wait for Chrome to finish and then Firefox to work. Unfortunately, I missed the Chrome installation for the web driver. But the point here is testing multiple web driver. It's easy. Different browsers is really easy. The test runs really quick, really fast, without interacting with the rest of the system. I can show you kind of like the test that I'm expecting. I have positive test here and the negative test. So let's start maybe with the positive. In this test, when I create a successful, basically, I expect the text value to disappear. Whatever I type in the text, it should disappear. Let me see if I can drag my. So it's easy to move. So basically here in this case, if it fails, I don't want it to disappear. But in my test, what I have, if it's successful, I want the text box, the text box to be cleared. It's a nice way to test it without we don't need end-to-end testing to do this. But how can you do it without end-to-end testing? I find that this is challenging. So I think that this type of component testing for Angular presentation is a great way to test the UI in a more meaningful way. I can show you how it doesn't clear now, which is oops. So you notice here, it clears. After creating, it does clear. It's very quick, but if you see it here, clear. So basically, there's the test that makes sure that if a user or if a customer types something that ticks box and the to-do is created successfully, there's not clear. It will be cleared, basically, the text box. We have another text as example here. One last test I'm going to show you. It's like if you have existing to-dos and you want to make sure whatever to-do the customer is creating, it will be at the top, not the bottom, not the middle. That's a UI business logic. You want to do this with end-to-end Selenium, it's going to be expensive because you really don't want to do this there. But with this one, you can actually test it in a more component way, and you can actually have it testable and quick. You can test every link, every behavior from the UI without having a unit test written. I assume again I'm going to have unit test questions, but I don't have unit test here, and I'm testing everything. And this is really quick and really fast. And if I refactor my code, my application, my test not going to break. And I can read actually. I can read what I'm doing, without mocking, things. I do mock. I like.
So
I do
can
mock.
you explain
How it works?
Yeah.
So I have this API mock, which is the class that I created, and I'm gonna have to open this class. All it does is I provide responses for the following URL, and the way that the Angular mock work here, backend, the HTTP backend server, the HTTP backend server. As example here, I'm sure with Angular you have tested this. You have seen this backend.when get happen. For this URL, this is the way that we've been writing our unit test in Angular, but we've been doing it in a smaller context. We've been doing it for controllers, testing that's if a controller gets this kind of action or a service gets this kind of URL, return this kind of response. You can do this with a Git post. I'm just doing the same thing, but with Selenium. With Selenium, you can actually Angular can fire a request against and post and different HTTP post and GET methods against a URL. But what the HTTP backend does, it intercepts this URL and return this response. Basically, mocks it from the lowest level. I'm not doing it from like somewhere in the middle that I might miss something. No, I'm doing it. It's truly component testing, presentation. I'm testing the UI Angular presentation layer only. I'm not going like I'm not testing just before it or just after it. I'm testing this presentation from the UI up to the HTTP back to the UI. We've been doing this in our current team for a year now, and it has been successful. We have not had any Angular defect. We had other defects, but not Angular defects, which is I think makes us feel more confident. The last thing you want is to deploy JavaScript UI issues and go ahead, please.
This actually is very good because you don't need to test controllers or the business logic in the controllers. Because if you don't use this kind of a mocking strategy, then we need to start unit testing the controllers.
I find it useless.
Controllers, I think unit tests we don't need if we are testing this way.
That's it.
Okay, there's something.
Because a controller's job, in my opinion, is the controller is just to control the flow of the application. That's what controllers for. That's what MVC for. MVC's controllers is to control the flow. What I'm going to test there.
But still, how the unit tests ensure that the unexpected changes, whenever someone will try to make a changes, okay, and it can affect the functionality, so it will not broken the application if we have a unit test.
But this can also do it in the same way. Maybe more meaning.
If the customer, as example here, as a customer, I think a business, I'm sure our business analyst for the project will come say, Saad, I want to be able to type some text here, and when I click enter, I want to show this if it fails, I don't want to be clear. I want to see an alert here. I'm testing even the alert that shows in the screen, by the way, and the content of the alert that shows in the screen, not just the alert happening, the content of the alert that's happening.
No, I agree with this one, but the problem will be, when problem takes place, like someone has made a changes, So to identify the place where that problem has
Correct.
taken place, that is the difficult. If we have a unit test, we can spot that the area very quickly. But with these tests, I don't think so. It's
I'm
easier.
absolutely right. I would do it if, that's why I started with thin layer. Because an Angular application normally is a thin layer.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm relying on here. You're right. If I have a thick layer, I would say do not do this. Like at the back end, definitely we need unit tests because if something fails, we want to know what exactly failed. Otherwise, I'm going to end up with debugging and to find out inspection, to find out exactly where it fails. And unit test is good for that. You're absolutely right. But for a thin layer, when you have just a controller that pulls a service that returns data that binds it to the site, Angular is just two-way binding. What does it do? Nothing.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
I have even here sorting. Even the Angular functionality now. Sometimes I hate when I used to like to test, to implement or re-implement, as example, the filter, to do it in the controller, just because I can test it. I don't have to do this because Angular filters just should work in the HTML page. As example here, I'm going to go to the source and I'm going to show you the code for the HTML that Angular works on. Don't have things, please. Okay, here we go. This is just a simple example, If I take this minus, which is, it takes care of the order in here. I have an order. So let's say a mistake that happened and someone tried to break things, and this test will actually trigger a thing immediately. So I'm gonna run this. But for what I want to show you here is actually things like this, that the Angular functionality embedded in the HTML, that is very, very difficult to test or impossible to test with unit tests. It's just something is hard. Maybe we don't, if I'm testing the behavior of my presentation layer, and the good thing about this is I can run this like a unit test. I can get the feedback of this unit test and from the CI first thing if I want. I just like it's really a unit test, but with Selenium. And I think that's kind of like what I think is a big advantage with this way, Go ahead, please.
About the controller testing, here the code that you use is not using any AngularJS library, right? It's just making HTTP calls, mocking the response. So later on, for example, if you want to change from AngularJS to Angular 2, or let's say to React.js, your tests are still meaningful here. Because Protractor can, but if we suppose, unit test the controller or the services, and instead of testing the HTML content, if the ordering is correct, you just look at the outcome of a function where you get a list and you look at the first item in the list, as opposed to testing in BDD style like this and mocking the Angular controllers, HTTP, then you would be able to rewrite. You will have to rewrite.
You can upgrade to Angular 2.0 even, without the worrying about how can I do
to update your tests.
I totally agree with you. I think it's ideal if you have a thin layer. Yes, I think it's test the component in isolation, and you can, as Kevin said, you can change the implementation. You can use whatever. The only thing that you have to test to change is your browser. But I think it's in the browser. You can encapsulate the browser into a different implementation that uses your third party to truly encapsulate, to be encapsulated away from the Protractor, which is the only interaction here is the browser. So yes, you're right. I don't have Angular other than the mocking, and everything is encapsulated. If I switch to any other implementation, I can switch very easily. If I upgrade to Angular 2.0 at any point of time, I don't have to worry about, does my application work? It's just like it's a nightmare, if you have an application that's currently in production and then you want to upgrade it and change the implementation. I would say I will be scared to do this, as a developer. I need more testing to be, but I can't go I'm backed by a set of tests that can actually confidently upgrade simply. I don't have this confidence if I don't have this kind of test. Unfortunately, we cannot do this, this type of level testing to this level of details just with end-to-end testing. But if you notice, that's what testers try to do. Test automation. If you have any in your corporation, they will try to test things that's not supposed to be tested end-to-end, but they don't have another option to do it. That's why they do it. But that's another option. When our testers start seeing the way that we start testing the UI, we got more confident to get our application out. They start, even the compatibility, they have it like the last thing to be done before the release. But if something is wrong, you really want, but we got that level of confidence that when it comes to the UI, just work, and we have enough tests that to confidently say it works. We have a view of like the spec flow, and you know what, you can use a cucumber at this point, because I think if you have test automation employees, they love to add cucumber and spec flow, like types of tests, and that's easy they're easy for them to read, and even the reporting can be much easier. So when it comes to documentation, I find it much better documentation than just unit tests, because sometimes we then test the unit but doesn't tell you exactly what's trying to do, you know, from the higher level, because it's not a behavioral driven. But here you actually have a behavioral driven, and whatever test they have, I'm sure my business analyst asked me for it, and that's why I have it. If my business analyst didn't ask me for it, they wouldn't have it. One last thing maybe I want to show you is that I found it is interesting to test the alert. If something goes wrong with the system, the negative. With end-to-end, how do you test the negative? You know, the negative test. It's very difficult to set up your case to actually get the negative scenario. But here, as example, I'm expecting errors to happen. As example, and if you see here, I'm marking a failed to-do creation response. And when this happens, I don't want the value to be clear. As example. I'm doing the same thing here, but in different tests, I test the content of the alert bot. I'm saying here, I'm going to get an error notification, and this error notification is going to tell me an error has occurred. And that's what you get from the 500 server error from .NET. But if you're Java, you're going to get something else, you know. So don't use it against Java. Go ahead, please.
Page object, you are using page object here. Will you explain?
Yeah, page object. I think the page object is a simple and nice pattern to do. What you see here is the page object is, it's how the code is cleaner. It's more readable. There is no HTML, names or IDs or class names or anything here. Just you describe what you want to do. As example, here I'm saying page.visit. Page has a to-do text field. I'm bad at naming, guys. So it's not the best person for naming, but it's gonna. If someone's better than me in naming and doesn't like my method, they can just simply refactor it and rename it, and it will rename every test. But describe what you want to do here. Now I'm going to take you to the page pattern. What is it? It's very simple. There's not much there, but it's good to see it. Where did I put the page pattern? Hang on. Sorry, guys.
Ctrl-Shift-O, you can find it.
It's here. It is small font. So there's the page pattern. Basically, I'm using here, if you notice, the export requires, which is the Node.js way to create a module. The page model is simply, so you can do it similar in .NET and Java. You can do the same thing. It's just a class with method, and inside the method you have your implementation of the browser. As example, like in this case, Protractor and Selenium, you can end up with WebDriver, Selenium. So it's basically, and you see how the text is encapsulated within this method, and they return the element. So my test, which is my clients, doesn't know what IDs and what class names and how do I select it. All it knows is they want the text field. I'm getting them the text field. This method can be used from different tests, and when you want to maintain it, and for some reason you have to rename it, which is happening a lot. When you want to rename your ID, you just rename it to one place. You don't have to rename it in 10 places. So it's a smarter way to actually manage and maintain your application in Protractor, or Selenium. And especially I find it difficult with JavaScript, because if it's not well maintained, it will be a nightmare to manage. So we have to actually maintain the Selenium very well. I think that's all for me. Any questions? I hope I didn't forget anything. Do you have any questions? Please go ahead.
You were saying that the difference between Protractor and AngularJS is, Selenium is Protractor knows the AngularJS lifecycle, and you don't need to write browser scripts, so it waits for the response to come. In your example here, can you show anything like that? Do you have anything like that here?
I can't show it because it works, But normally, as example here, and what I'm talking about, let me close this. So I can show you what I mean by doing. I'm gonna go to tools here. The tools. Working. I probably cannot show you, but what I'm doing here is when you do something like this, it's paged already loaded. Of course, I don't have a backend. This obviously I don't have backend. But if you are doing backend and this response is given a complex system, takes time to load your clients or policies. This HTTP request is Selenium have hard time to actually doesn't even know there's an AJAX request going to the backend, so it will fire. I cannot show it because of VS I don't have it. But with Protractor, it actually waits. It's naturally it waits for. It knows there's like communication happening with the backend server, and it waits for it until it's done, and then continue clicking. Unfortunately, I can't show it because of it just when something works, it's hard to show that doesn't work.
Does Mock API have anything like that inside it to return you something maybe a bit later?
Probably I could, if I know about this, probably I could actually, I'm not sure if I can actually, probably it's possible to delay the response, but it's gonna work, it's gonna wait for it. Like let's say I'm gonna delay it for 3 seconds, it's gonna, maybe I can try maybe to do this. So let's say, let's give it a shot.
If you open the controller where it makes the call, you can put a debugger there and then let the...
As if I go to the debugger, it's going to wait, the browser is going to wait. I think it's going to stop, the test is going to stop. It's not, the browser is not going to continue clicking. I think it's just going to stop because the debugging is in place. But you can try if you want. Do you have other questions?
I have one question, but I think maybe it will be irrelevant. Have you worked with other frameworks as well, like React.js or some other which are very popular?
What's that?
React.js, have you worked with that?
I've not worked like in professional environment with React.js. I did explore it, but I have not worked in React.js in a professional environment. Unlike Angular, I've been using Angular with.
I started learning Angular and I find it very, it has a very good structures and some model view controller patterns, architecture implementations and everything. But I don't know, still the people are saying the React.js is better than AngularJS, but I just wanted to know the reason.
I can't, probably I don't have enough knowledge to tell you if Angular is better than React.js. But when I looked at React.js back in the days, I felt that the testing, it's much better and stronger with Angular. I think the Angular team spends so much time to make Angular testable.
Yeah.
I think that's the selling point for me. Even let's say React.js it's structured better and it's more powerful, but Angular will allow me to deliver better quality code, and I think that's one of the best feature about Angular. And it's very difficult unless you overcome this. It's very difficult for me personally to go with another. It's just because of the dependency injection and the way that you can test your application. As I said, if I'm a JavaScript only developer, I probably have might make this risk, but I'm a back-end developer with some skill in JavaScript and front-end. And what I think in this case is very important for us, which is many in this case, is to test our code because we might make a mistake. And Angular allows me to deliver quality code exactly like professional JavaScript developer who write React.js day and night. And that's why I'm in love with Angular.
There's a number of testing frameworks available, like Jasmine and the other one Karma, and these are. If you could give us some
more
difference.
So Karma is normally used. Jasmine is what I'm using now, basically. Protractor and Selenium work. Mocha and Jasmine, they're testing framework, and you can run unit tests within them, or you can run integration tests within those two frameworks. So you need one or the other. You need Mocha or Jasmine. People feel biased for one or the other. I like Jasmine because I think it does the job and it's simple and speedy. I'm favorite to Jasmine. I'm sorry. What's the other framework you mentioned? Karma is just in this case it's a test runner. That's what Karma is. It's basically what it does. It just watches your test and keeps running the unit test. So it's mainly for unit testing. And it's not for it's not like Jasmine. I think Karma will work with
It's for unit testing.
Mainly for unit testing. I would not write Selenium testing with Karma. You can. I don't see what's the advantage. What I like about Karma is the auto monitoring and the changes and keep running the test. I like this working for unit testing is amazing. And you can run Jasmine with Karma. Unfortunately, maybe I don't have an example or not, but you can run Jasmine and Karma within Grunt. So I think
But if for example I'm writing a unit test of a controller.
I would say Karma. Use Karma.
Okay, Karma, and I want to run that unit test against a number of browsers. I was using JS test driver before. I think it's the JavaScript library, so which can capture the different browsers at runtime and just start, testing start running the unit tests against those browsers. So I think this type of features is available in Karma.
Yeah, Karma can do that as well.
Karma can handle this one as well. Okay, that's good.
Please come up. You have a question? Anyone has any question? Please go ahead.
Before today, I thought Selenium was a kind of a CI server or something like that, but today it seems that it's a substitute for Karma. In Karma, you can also specify what kind of browsers you would like to test on, and other stuff like same stuff you can use in Karma. You can use in Jasmine as well, and for BDD and TDD. Yes, are they a substitute, Selenium and Karma?
Selenium is standard, it's kind of industry standard. That's what the industry uses for to test the UI.
You were using like Selenium tests, but I don't know.
Does Karma have a web driver, internal web driver? Does it have an internal web driver? Is that what you're saying? I think Karma
Karma is just a test runner.
just test runner, that's what they thought,
It just uses the underlying testing frameworks.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought as well.
There's a change.
That's what I thought as well.
It's same stuff that we are doing here with Selenium.
Now, Selenium is more. Selenium is. I'm not sure if Karma can do this for you, but Selenium will start the browser like the user.
There are different type of it opens a
I think Bob uses Selenium in the backend.
Form.js, I forgot the name of the browser. It doesn't open a browser, but it mimics the browser. Phantom.js.
Phantom.js, correct.
But otherwise, it does same stuff like Selenium.
With Phantom.js, it's a bit different. Phantom.js is headless browser.
Yeah, you can open Chrome or IE or Firefox. Same.
But it's a headless browser. It's not. You're not testing the system like the system can use it. If you're not using Chrome driver. But if you are using Chrome driver, I'm sure you're using Selenium at the back end. I'm sure. Otherwise, I'm not sure how can. You probably can tell me more about.
Like there are some packages, Karma.chrome, Karma.
That's it. I think it uses Selenium at the back end. I think what happens is it's probably extension for Karma that probably uses the implementation of Selenium. But like, I'm gonna look into this.
Even with the headless driver, I think it should be using again the Selenium. It just uses the same driver, it just doesn't open because I used it before with the headless driver.
Yeah.
Again, it's Selenium, just it doesn't open the browser. Same technique.
I have to a little bit research this to see if actually it does Karma use the Selenium at the backend, but I'm gonna assume it does because that's what Selenium do. That's what. But like
that's why I thought Selenium it was like a CI server or something like that. It's just.
So, by the way, speaking about CI server, actually Selenium, you might need Selenium server what I've done here to run multi-threading, a browser, tests basically. You can fire 100, 200. Selenium grid, and that's the Selenium server basically. So that's why Selenium server is needed. But normally, if you go back to Selenium, what I've done, Chrome is a standalone web driver. Selenium provides standalone web driver, for Chrome. So that means you don't need to start the server, Selenium server, to do this. Same with Firefox, but unfortunately with the IE, it's not possible. There's no IE to web driver standalone basically, and you need the Selenium server. Sometimes for our testing, we don't need the server. But like if you have a lot of tests and if you need Selenium grid, that's why the server is needed there. For if you have a lot of 1,000 tests and you want to cut the running time to like half or more than that, you can use the Selenium grid and fire it against a server running at the back end. Yeah.
Is Angular already cross-browser compatible by itself? So when you test, do you still need to run all the different browsers?
All different browsers? Using Selenium or is manual?
No, I don't use any of. I'm just asking in general, like.
From what I've seen, testing the compatibility is actually using the browser is the best way to test your application. If you want to test your application with IE, use it with run it against IE. Most people actually have versions of IE, not just IE, not the latest IE. Many corporation has to run IE for a specific version. As example, 10, 11, 9. Disney they had 9.
That's why
I'm sure they upgraded. No,
Do you have can you give example of what Angular can fail on different browsers?
So I think in general,
Come across something.
it's just like a bit like it's mostly IE, especially older version of IE. JavaScript in general, I'm not sure what is it. IE and JavaScript, it doesn't work well, But not the latest IE. I'm saying it's like the older IE, the older version of IE. Like IE 9 or maybe 10, hopefully 10 is much better. But if you use 8 and 9, it's just absolute nightmare. You're probably going to need a full-time developer to maintain and to get this browser compatibility because it's not something simple to work with, But if you are using the latest, but that's the logic, I understand that not everyone can do this, But if you do the latest Angular, it works well. I think if you're using Angular and if you're using IE, I would say 10 and above, you should be fine. But like if you do an Angular, JavaScript in general with IE 8, it's probably, I would say, do not do it and just do MVC or Java, just do not do JavaScript in Angular 8 because you're going to spend way more money than it's worth developing your application. Angular 9 is debatable, you can get around it basically.
Is AngularJS is only for single page applications or can be used for other multi-page applications as well?
It's interesting, you can embed AngularJS within a normal application, it will work fine. We have done this, it's like, do not do this, but we have done this. Sometimes like, if you have a legacy system and you want a page, basically a partial of a page that works within an ASP.NET as example, you can use Angular to actually do specific tasks. Yes, you can use Angular within whatever application is for. But ideally, or most of the time, Angular is used to build a single page applications, not to have partial functionality in different areas. But you can use doable. I've done it in the past, and you can do it. But it works much better if you have clean application and you start your single page application. And yes, it's the main power with Angular is when you build in single page applications basically. Do you have questions?
just one thing that I want to say. Generally, Java developers like AngularJS more than React because we are used to use Spring framework. And Spring is using controller services exactly the same way, like Angular is using.
Very similar.
Therefore, because it's very similar, we can just quickly learn it and start applying it, and it should make sense for us as well.
Makes sense,
Yeah.
I think that's why I'm a fan of Angular as well.
And plus, React.js is like the old style servlet pages, in my opinion, where you capture the HTML code inside the JavaScript and just create a component. That style I don't like as well.
I looked at it and I'm sold to Angular. Maybe someday I'm wrong, but actually start with Knockout. Knockout and AngularJS. I thought like Knockout is better, but like it turned out that the industry adopted Angular and it's used in so many projects now. So Angular is actually, it's Angular Node.js is a hot topic. It's been a hot topic for the past I think couple of years now. So it does worthwhile looking how to develop applications with Angular and how to test them with Angular. It's not just development because it's important that it's the last thing you want is to adopt technology that you end up introducing defects and you're going to disappoint everyone around you. But what you want is to adopt the technology and do it well and test it well to get when it goes to production you just want to work and you're going to be in the winner's side instead of the loser's side basically.
What about version 2 Angular? I think the release can be 4 is there.
Yeah.
What comments do you have about it?
I have not looked into. I know I should have. Unfortunately, I got dragged away doing a lot of C# for the past 6 months. But I promise I'll stop doing that. I promise myself to take more time and to spend more time doing Angular and learn more about the latest in Angular. So yes, that's shortish from my side, but that's something that
anyone haven't switched, it's very recommended because it's very stable now, version 2, and it's improved the testing framework as well on the integration. So all the shortcomings and also certain size of Angular first version a bit slow, and also since they kept changing the first one, it was terrible because they kept bringing new things and also incompatibility. Second one is very fixed. And hence, like if you like React, there are a lot of good things from React as well there, and you can write very user-friendly and faster reactive user interfaces there.
Thanks, good answer. Maybe we can do a presentation one day about like AngularJS 2.0. So it's gonna be, I'm gonna be the first here. Do you have?
What do you think about TypeScript?
I think a lot of people believe that it's gonna play a big role in JavaScript. It's interesting, I think the industry for so many years tried to change the way that JavaScript work, but I think in my opinion they failed. And obviously JavaScript exists until now, and we use, which some people thought it's best simply of the web, but it's still there. I think JavaScript is a good technology, and Microsoft done a really good job with it. But still, it's interesting to see if it's really going to take over and it's going to work for the community or not. I think it goes back to the community. If the community adopts it, I think it's just going to...
But again, I can argue that it's already taken over because, one, TypeScript allows you a fixed environment. JavaScript, you basically don't have a version guarantee. You don't know which Xbox script it is, 5, 6 or whatever. TypeScript you can basically, and the great thing about TypeScript, it still ends up with JavaScript. So basically you can still output JavaScript, but you have for your own purposes a fixed development environment. And two, especially coming from Java and other type-safe languages, you get lots of type safety in there. And the interface and stuff like that, but also the main benefit of it, TypeScript allows you to write much bigger projects than JavaScript. And that's the one big problem with JavaScript. If you write a big project, you get lost in it. And TypeScript allows to exactly fix that. And the great thing about it, it is not replacing JavaScript, it basically is providing a cover for JavaScript problems. And so basically you still end up with JavaScript.
Another good thing is you can debug your TypeScript as well in the browser, so step through your TypeScript.
Can you read on browser?
It definitely is very powerful, and got very good selling points,
Definitely.
Do all browsers support that? Chrome with that.
Yeah.
Chrome and Firefox, I'm not sure about...
I don't know, it's a new thing.
and Edge as
We
well.
have to pick it up one day. Okay,
Cool.
cool. So yeah, I think there's it for today. I'm sorry for the delay of the presentation, but I hope it was useful. So thanks for coming.
We have half an hour networking outside, so just to collaborate.